Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and stared at the control panel in front of him. The numbers on the screen kept changing, and he needed to get them right. Today was not a day for mistakes. The aliens were coming aboard the ship, and everything had to be perfect. He had been working on the Horizon for 3 years now. It was a good ship, one of humanity's finest diplomatic vessels. But today was different. Today they would meet the Xinthians face to face for the first time. "Hey Jake, you almost done there?" Ben Crawford called from across the docking bay. Ben was his best friend and the only person on the ship who understood his jokes. "Almost. Just need to adjust the atmospheric controls. The Xinthians breathe something close to our air, but not exactly the same," Jake replied. His hands moved quickly over the keyboard, making small changes to the life support system. Captain Linda Hayes walked into the bay. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Everyone on the ship respected her. Some were even a little afraid of her. "Morrison Crawford status report," she said in her usual crisp tone. "We're ready, Captain," Jake said. "The docking bay is set up for their arrival. Atmospheric controls are adjusted. Temperature is stable. The gravity is at 90% Earth normal as they requested." The captain nodded. "Good. Remember, this is the most important mission humanity has ever undertaken. The Xinthians have technology far beyond ours. If we want to join the galactic community, we need to make a good impression." "Understood, Captain," both men said together. The captain left, and Jake felt his stomach twist with nervousness. He had seen pictures of the Xinthians, but pictures did not prepare you for the real thing. They were not like humans at all. They were not even close to any animal on Earth. "You nervous?" Ben asked. "A little," Jake admitted. "I mean, we're about to meet actual aliens, real ones. Not from movies or books." "Yeah, I know what you mean. I saw the briefing videos. They look pretty strange." Jake had watched those videos many times. The Xinthians were made of something like crystal. Their bodies were not solid in the way human bodies were. They could change shape, flowing from one form to another. They glowed with internal light and reflected colors in ways that hurt to look at for too long. The intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, the Xinthian shuttle has arrived. Prepare for docking." Jake's heart began to beat faster. This was it. He checked all his instruments one more time. Everything was green. Everything was ready. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that echoed through the bay. Jake watched the airlock door, waiting. Steam hissed as the pressure equalized between the two ships. Then slowly the door began to open. The first Xinthian to step through was tall and angular. His body was made of dark blue crystal that caught the light and threw it back in sharp beams. He moved in a way that seemed both fluid and geometric at the same time. This was Ambassador Zeknor, according to the briefing. Behind him came 3 more Xinthians. 2 were similar to the ambassador, large and imposing. But the 4th one made Jake stop breathing for a moment. She was smaller than the others. Her crystalline form was not dark blue but a lighter shade, almost transparent in places. As she moved, her body shifted through colors, pale blues and greens and purples flowing across her surface like water. Her shape was more curved than the others, with angles that seemed softer somehow, more graceful. "That's Kirith," Ben whispered beside him. "The junior ambassador." Jake could not look away. Where the other Xinthians moved in straight lines and sharp angles, Kirith seemed to flow. Her body created patterns as she walked, geometric shapes that appeared and disappeared in her crystalline structure. Captain Hayes stepped forward to greet the visitors. "Ambassador Zeknor, welcome to the Horizon. We are honored by your presence." The ambassador's voice came through the translation device clipped to his form. It sounded musical, like wind chimes. "Captain Hayes, we thank you for your hospitality. May this meeting bring understanding between our peoples." The formal greetings continued, but Jake barely heard them. He was watching Kirith. She stood behind the ambassador, perfectly still, perfectly composed. But even standing still, her body created patterns. Light moved through her crystal structure in waves. "It was beautiful, Morrison." Captain Hayes' voice cut through his thoughts. "You're assigned as technical liaison to Ambassador Kirith. You'll ensure her quarters are properly configured for Xinthian biology." Jake's mouth went dry. "Yes, Captain." Kirith turned to look at him. She had no eyes in the human sense, but Jake felt her attention focus on him anyway. It was like standing under a spotlight. "Engineer Morrison will take care of you," the captain continued. "He's one of our best." Jake stepped forward, trying not to shake. Up close, Kirith was even more impressive. She was taller than him by at least a foot. Her crystalline body refracted the bay lights into tiny rainbows that danced across the floor. "Hello," he said, feeling stupid. "What did you say to an alien?" "Greetings, Engineer Morrison." Her voice through the translator was softer than the ambassador's, more melodic. "I look forward to working with you. Same here." Me too. Yes." Jake wanted to disappear. Why was he so bad at this? Ben covered a laugh with a cough. Captain Hayes shot Jake a warning look before turning back to the Zynthians. "Let me show you to your quarters. We've prepared everything according to your specifications." The group began to move toward the corridor. Jake fell into step beside Kirith, very aware of her presence. She was quiet as they walked, her form shifting with each step, creating new patterns and angles. "Is this your first time meeting humans?" Jake asked, trying to make conversation. "Yes," she replied. "We have spoken through communication devices, but never face to face. You are quite different from what I expected." "Different how?" "Softer, more irregular. Your species does not follow the mathematical patterns we are used to." Jake did not know if that was a compliment or an insult. "Well, you're different from what I expected too. But in a good way. The way you move, it's really interesting. From an engineering perspective." Kirith's colors shifted slightly, moving more toward purple. Jake wondered if that meant something. They reached the guest quarters, and Jake began explaining the controls. As he talked about atmospheric settings and temperature adjustments, he felt more comfortable. This was what he knew. This was his language. Kirith listened carefully, asking intelligent questions. She understood the systems quickly, which impressed Jake. Maybe this assignment would not be so bad after all. As the Zynthians settled into their quarters, Jake returned to his station. Ben was waiting for him. "So how does it feel to be in charge of the pretty alien?" Ben grinned. "Shut up," Jake said, but he was smiling too. "She's just an ambassador, and I'm just doing my job." "Sure you are." Jake ignored him and went back to work. But his mind kept returning to those flowing patterns, those shifting colors, those perfect geometric angles. He had never seen anything like Kirith before, and he had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more complicated. 1 week had passed since the Zynthians arrived on the horizon. Jake had spent most of that time working with Kirith on a joint project. The humans and Zynthians were sharing technology, learning from each other. It was exciting work, the kind Jake had always dreamed of doing, but it was also nerve-wracking. Every day he had to spend hours alone with Kirith in the engineering lab. Every day he became more aware of how fascinating she was. She was not like the other Zynthians. Ambassador Zeknor and his aides were formal and distant. They spoke only when necessary and kept their interactions strictly professional. But Kirith was curious. She asked questions about everything. She wanted to know how human technology worked, yes, but she also wanted to know about human culture, human food, human emotions. Why do humans shake hands? She had asked yesterday. It's a greeting, a way to show friendship, Jake had explained. But you touch each other. Does it not cause discomfort? No, we like touching. Well, not all the time, but when we're being friendly. Kirith had gone very still, her colors shifting to a deep blue. Zynthians rarely touch. Our bodies are fragile. A strong impact could crack our crystal structure. Jake had not known that. He made a mental note to be more careful around her. Now it was early morning, ship time. Jake entered the lab carrying a coffee in one hand and a datapad in the other. Kirith was already there, standing in front of a holographic display. The display showed the schematics for a new power system they were designing together. "Good morning," Jake said. "Good morning, Jake." She had started using his first name a few days ago. He liked hearing it in her musical voice. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Jake was getting used to the way Kirith moved. She did not have hands like humans did. Instead, her crystalline structure extended and reshaped itself to manipulate objects. It was like watching water flow, except the water was solid and glowing. "I need to access the upper panel," Kirith said. "Can you lower the hologram?" "Actually, I need to see the upper section too." "Can you reach it?" "I believe so." Kirith moved closer to the display. Her body began to change shape, growing taller and more elongated. Her crystalline structure flowed upward, reaching for the controls near the ceiling. As she stretched, her form created new angles and patterns. Jake watched without thinking. The way her body moved was hypnotic. The light caught in her crystal structure and bounced around, creating shapes within shapes. Geometric patterns appeared and disappeared. He saw spirals, saw curves that followed mathematical sequences he recognized. The way those angles refract, he muttered to himself, thinking out loud the way he always did when he was concentrating, following a Fibonacci sequence. Absolutely perfect proportions. She's like a living work of art. The words were out of his mouth before he realized what he was doing, and then, in the silence that followed, he realized something terrible. His communication device was on. The small device clipped to his collar was active, which meant his words had gone straight to the translator HFY War, which meant she had heard every word he said. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. His face went hot. He could not breathe. Kirith stopped moving. Her extended form froze in place, the patterns on her surface suddenly still. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Jake started to say something, but his voice came out as a squeak. He cleared his throat and tried again. I didn't mean, that is, I wasn't. Kirith slowly retracted her form back to her normal height. The colors flowing across her surface changed from soft blues and greens to something darker. Was that purple? Jake did not know what it meant. She turned to face him. Without eyes, it was hard to read her expression, but Jake felt like she was staring straight into his soul. My apologies, he managed to say. That was completely unprofessional. I was just thinking out loud. I do that sometimes when I'm working. It's a bad habit. I should learn to control it better. I'm really sorry if I offended you. He was babbling now, words spilling out too fast. He could not stop himself. Kirith remained silent. Her colors continued to shift, moving through shades Jake had not seen before. Deep purples mixed with flashes of bright pink. Her crystalline structure seemed to pulse slightly. I should report to Captain Hayes, Jake said miserably. This is a diplomatic incident. I've probably ruined everything. The captain is going to kill me. The alliance between our species is going to fall apart because I can't keep my mouth shut. Excuse me, Kirith said suddenly. Her voice through the translator sounded strange, almost strained. I must go. Before Jake could respond, she moved past him and out of the lab. She moved quickly, faster than he had seen her move before. The door slid shut behind her and Jake was alone. He stood there for a full minute, staring at nothing. Then he grabbed his comm device and called Ben. What's up? Ben answered cheerfully. I'm dead. I'm completely dead. What happened? Jake explained everything. The words, the translator, Kirith's reaction. By the time he finished, Ben was silent. Say something, Jake begged. You're right. You're completely dead. That's not helpful. What do you want me to say? You basically told an alien ambassador she's hot. During an important diplomatic mission. Yeah, you're screwed. Jake sat down heavily in a chair. It wasn't like that. I was admiring her geometric structure. From a mathematical perspective. Sure, keep telling yourself that. I need to talk to the captain. Are you insane? Why would you do that? Because hiding it will make things worse. I need to confess before Ambassador Zeknor files a complaint. Ben sighed. Your funeral, man. Want me to come with you? No, I need to do this alone. Jake made his way to the captain's office with leaden feet. Each step felt like walking toward his execution. Captain Hayes was going to strip him of his rank. She was going to send him back to Earth in disgrace. His career was over. His dreams of working in space were finished. He pressed the buzzer at the captain's door. Come in, her voice called. Jake entered. Captain Hayes sat behind her desk reviewing reports on her screen. She looked up as he entered. Morrison, what can I do for you? Captain, I need to report an incident. Her eyes sharpened. What kind of incident? Jake told her everything. He did not leave out any details. When he finished, the captain leaned back in her chair and studied him. You said she had a Fibonacci sequence in her geometric patterns? The captain asked. Yes, ma'am. Her crystalline structure follows several mathematical sequences, but the Fibonacci spiral was the most prominent when she extended her form. And you found this beautiful? Jake's face heated again. I found it mathematically elegant, ma'am. Captain Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you know what the Zynthians think about their form? Their shape? No, ma'am. Neither do I, that's the problem. We're still learning about their culture. She drummed her fingers on the desk. Has Ambassador Zeknor contacted me about this? Not yet, ma'am. Then we wait. Maybe Kirith won't report it. Maybe she understood you meant no offense. She seemed upset, Captain. Her colors changed. Colors mean different things in Zynthian culture. We don't have a complete translation guide yet. The captain stood up. Go back to your quarters, Morrison. Stay there until I call for you. If the Zynthians file a complaint, I'll handle it. Yes, Captain. And I'm sorry. I know you are. Dismissed. Jake returned to his quarters feeling like a condemned man. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? A week ago, everything was fine. Now he had probably destroyed humanity's chance at joining the galactic community. His comm device beeped. It was a message from Captain Hayes. His heart sank. Morrison, report to Conference Room 3 immediately. This was it. The Zynthians had complained. Jake pulled on his uniform jacket and walked to the conference room on shaking legs. When the door opened, he saw Captain Hayes standing there. Next to her was Ambassador Zeknor, and next to him was Kirith. Jake swallowed hard. You wanted to see me, Captain? The ambassador has requested a private meeting with you, Captain Hayes said. Her face was unreadable. I'll be right outside if you need me. She left, and Jake was alone with two aliens. He had never felt smaller in his life. Please sit, Ambassador Zeknor said. Jake sat. He kept his eyes on the table, afraid to look at Kirith. Engineer Morrison, the ambassador began. We need to discuss what happened in the laboratory today. Jake's mouth was dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Ambassador Zeknor stood on the other side of the table, his dark blue crystal form reflecting the conference room lights. Kirith stood beside him, her colors shifting in ways Jake could not interpret. I apologize, Jake finally managed to say. What I said was inappropriate. I understand if you want to file a formal complaint. A complaint? Ambassador Zeknor's tone through the translator seemed almost amused. No, Engineer Morrison. We are not here to complain. Jake looked up, confused. You're not? No. We are here because you have done something quite extraordinary, something that has never happened before in all of Zynthian diplomatic history. Jake glanced at Kirith. She had not moved. Her colors were still shifting, still creating patterns he did not understand. I don't understand, Jake said. Ambassador Zeknor seemed to consider his words carefully. Tell me, Engineer Morrison, what do you know about Zynthian culture? Not much, sir. We've only had your people's broadcasts for a few years. Most of what we know is about your technology and your government structure. And our communication methods? Our language? I know you use translators to speak with us. And I know you communicate with each other somehow through your crystal structures. But we don't understand how. We do more than communicate through our forms, the ambassador said. We express emotion through geometry. Our shape, our angles, our internal patterns, these all convey meaning to other Zynthians. Jake thought about this. Like body language for humans? More than body language. For humans, body language is secondary to spoken words. For Zynthians, shape is primary. Our forms tell other Zynthians what we think and feel. A sharp angle means one thing. A curve means another. Certain mathematical sequences convey specific emotional states. I didn't know that, Jake said. Few humans do. It is difficult to explain. Your species does not naturally perceive mathematical patterns the way we do. The ambassador paused. But you, Engineer Morrison, you saw a Fibonacci sequence in Kirith's form? Yes, sir. It was quite clear when she extended her structure upward. The spiral pattern, the proportions, they all followed the sequence perfectly. Kirith's colors suddenly flashed bright pink. The ambassador's form seemed to pulse with something that might have been satisfaction. Do you know what a Fibonacci sequence means in Zynthian shape language? The ambassador asked. No, sir. It is how we show interest in another person. Attraction. What you might call affection, or even love. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He stared at the ambassador, then at Kirith. What? When Kirith formed those patterns, she was expressing her interest in you. She has been doing so for several days now. We thought humans could not perceive such signals. We thought our emotional language was invisible to your species. Jake's mind was racing. So when I said she was beautiful, when I mentioned the Fibonacci sequence, you told her in the most profound way possible that you perceived her feelings. And by calling those patterns perfect, by saying she was like living art, you responded in kind. Jake could not breathe. This could not be happening. But I was just observing. I was commenting on the mathematics. In Zynthian culture, perceiving the mathematical harmony in another's form is the highest compliment. It means you see them truly. You understand them on a fundamental level. The ambassador's tone grew warmer. What you did, Engineer Morrison, was speak our language without knowing it. You saw meaning where other humans see only pretty lights. Jake looked at Kirith again. She was glowing brighter now, her colors cycling through purples and pinks and soft blues. "Is this true?" he asked her directly. For a long moment she did not respond. Then she spoke, and her voice through the translator was soft, almost shy. "Yes, I have been interested in you since we met. Your mind works in patterns. You see systems and connections. You think in mathematics just as we do. I thought you could not perceive my signals. I thought I was alone in my feelings. And when you heard what I said today, I was overwhelmed. I did not know how to respond. Among my people, such a statement would be a declaration, a significant one. I needed time to understand if you meant it the way I hoped you did." Jake's head was spinning. This was not what he had expected when he walked into this room. "I'm still confused. You're saying that I accidentally told you I'm attracted to you? By commenting on your geometry?" "Yes," Kirith said simply. "And you've been telling me you're attracted to me? Through your shape patterns?" "Yes," Jake laughed. He could not help it. The absurdity of the situation was too much. Here he was, thinking he had caused a diplomatic disaster when really he had stumbled into some kind of alien courtship ritual. "I'm sorry," he said, still smiling. "This is just so strange. I spend my whole life being awkward around people. I never know what to say. I never pick up on social cues. But apparently I'm fluent in alien body language." Even Ambassador Zeknor seemed amused. "It appears so. Your analytical mind, which makes you feel different from other humans, is precisely what allows you to understand us." Jake looked at Kirith. Really looked at her. She was beautiful. He had thought so from the first moment he saw her. But he had assumed those feelings were impossible. She was an alien, a member of a completely different species. How could anything develop between them? "What happens now?" he asked. "That is what we must discuss," Ambassador Zeknor said. "The situation is unprecedented. Never before has a Xinthian formed an attachment to a member of another species, and never has a member of another species returned those feelings. Does anyone else know? Not yet. But they will soon. Word spreads quickly on a ship this size, and both our governments will need to be informed." Jake felt a weight settle on his chest. "Will this cause problems for the diplomatic mission?" "It might," the ambassador admitted. "There will be those among my people who disapprove, and likely among yours as well. Change is always difficult." "Then maybe we should just forget this happened," Jake said, though the words hurt to say. "I don't want to ruin the alliance between our species." "No," Kirith said sharply. Her form flashed bright red. "I will not hide what I feel. Not when I have finally found someone who understands me." Jake was surprised by her intensity. "But your career, the mission, are important, yes. But not more important than truth. Not more important than connection." She moved closer to him. "You are the first being I have met who sees mathematics the way I do. Who finds beauty in equations and patterns. Do you know how rare that is? Even among my own people, I am considered strange. Too focused on numbers, too analytical." "I know exactly what you mean," Jake said quietly. "My whole life, people have told me I think too much. I analyze things too much. I don't connect with people the way I'm supposed to. But you connected with me." "Yeah, I did." Ambassador Zeknor watched them both. "I believe," he said slowly, "that this connection, unusual as it is, might be exactly what our peoples need. If a human and a Xinthian can understand each other so completely, it proves that our species can work together, can learn from each other." "So you're not going to separate us?" Jake asked. "I cannot separate you. That choice is yours to make. But I will not hide this from our respective governments. They must know what has developed." Jake thought about Captain Hayes, about his parents back on Earth, about the media attention this would bring. It was going to be complicated, messy, difficult. But when he looked at Kirith, glowing with those soft colors forming patterns he was learning to read, he knew he could not walk away. "I want to try," he said. "If Kirith wants to try, I want to see where this goes." "I do," Kirith said immediately. Her colors flashed bright and happy. Ambassador Zeknor nodded. "Then we will inform Captain Hayes, together, and we will face whatever comes next as allies." They left the conference room together. Captain Hayes was waiting outside, her expression tense. When Ambassador Zeknor explained the situation, her eyebrows rose higher and higher. "Let me get this straight," she said. "Morrison accidentally courted an alien ambassador by commenting on her math?" "Essentially, yes," the ambassador confirmed. Captain Hayes looked at Jake. For a moment, he thought she might yell. Then incredibly, she smiled. Morrison, you are the strangest engineer I've ever met. But maybe that's exactly what we need. Over the next few days, the news spread through the ship. Reactions were mixed. Some crew members were supportive. Others were skeptical or uncomfortable. Ben thought it was hilarious. Only you, he said, laughing. Only you could start an interspecies relationship by accident. But through it all, Kirith stayed by Jake's side. She taught him more about Xinthian shape language. He taught her about human customs and emotions. They spent hours talking about mathematics, about engineering, about the universe and their place in it. And slowly, Jake realized something wonderful. For the first time in his life, he did not feel like an outsider. With Kirith, he could be exactly who he was. His analytical mind was not a weakness. It was a bridge between worlds. 3 weeks had passed since the truth came out. Jake sat in the engineering lab watching Kirith work on a holographic display. She was showing him a new propulsion system that Xinthians used for their faster ships. Her crystalline form shifted and flowed as she explained the concepts, creating patterns that Jake was learning to read like a second language. See here, she said, pointing to a section of the diagram. This is where the energy converges. We use harmonic frequencies to amplify the power output. Jake studied the design. That's brilliant. Our ships use brute force to achieve the same result. Your method is much more elegant. Kirith's colors shifted to a warm pink. Jake now knew that meant she was pleased. He smiled. You're getting better at reading my expressions, she said. I'm learning. You make it easy. Their work together had become smoother, more natural. They understood each other's thinking processes. Jake could often predict what Kirith would suggest before she said it. And she seemed to know when he was stuck on a problem, offering help before he asked. The door to the lab opened. Ben walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Morning, you two. Jake, I brought your caffeine addiction. Kirith, sorry, I still don't know what you drink. We do not require stimulants like caffeine, Kirith explained. Our energy comes from light absorption. Right, solar-powered aliens. That's actually pretty cool. Ben had become comfortable around Kirith over the past weeks. He treated her like any other crew member, which Jake appreciated. Have you heard the news? Ben asked. What news? Jake took the coffee gratefully. The diplomatic negotiations are going really well, like better than anyone expected. Both sides are talking about long-term technology exchanges, cultural programs, maybe even a joint space station. That's great, Jake said. Yeah, and apparently, a big part of why things are going so well is because of you two. Kirith tilted her form, which Jake had learned was similar to a human tilting their head. What do you mean? Captain Hayes told me that the other Xinthians have been watching how you and Jake work together. They see that humans and Xinthians can understand each other, can cooperate. It's making them more willing to take chances on the alliance. Jake had not thought about it that way. He and Kirith were just doing their jobs, and spending time together because they wanted to. He had not realized it might affect the larger mission. The captain wants to see you both later. Ben added, something about a press conference. Jake groaned. I hate press conferences. Too bad. You're famous now. The human who fell for an alien. The media loves it. After Ben left, Jake turned to Kirith. Does the attention bother you? Sometimes, she admitted. I am not used to being observed so closely. In Xinthian society, I was always quiet, always in the background. Now everyone watches my every movement. I know what you mean. I used to be invisible. Now people stop me in the corridors to ask questions. Do you regret it? Kirith asked. What happened between us? No, Jake said it without hesitation. Never. You're the best thing that's happened to me. Her colors bloomed into bright, happy patterns. Jake reached out his hand, stopping just short of touching her. They had learned to be careful. Her crystalline structure was delicate. A careless touch could damage her. I wish I could hold your hand, he said. I know. I wish I could feel your touch without fear. But we will find ways. We are both engineers. We solve problems. Later that day, they met with Captain Hayes in her office. She looked tired but satisfied. The negotiations are entering the final phase, she told them. Both governments are preparing to sign a treaty. It's historic. Humanity will officially be part of the galactic community. That's wonderful news, Captain, Jake said. It is. And both Earth and the Xinthian homeworld want to recognize the role you two played in making this happen. There will be a ceremony. Awards, public recognition. Jake felt uncomfortable. We were just doing our jobs. You were doing more than that. You proved that our species can connect on a deeper level, that we're not so different after all. Captain Hayes smiled. I know you don't like attention, Morrison, but sometimes duty requires us to step into the spotlight. The ceremony was held in the main assembly hall of the Horizon. Crew members filled the room along with Xinthian delegates. Cameras recorded everything for broadcast to both Earth and the Xinthian homeworld. Jake stood on the stage in his dress uniform, feeling exposed. Kirith stood beside him, her form glowing under the bright lights. Ambassador Zeknor spoke about the importance of the moment. Captain Hayes presented them both with medals of distinction. When it was Jake's turn to speak, his mind went blank. He looked out at all the faces watching him, human and Xinthian alike. He felt Kirith beside him, her presence calming. I'm not good at speeches, he began. I'm better with numbers than words, but I'll try to explain what this means to me. He took a breath. My whole life I felt different. I saw the world in patterns and equations while everyone else saw something else. I thought that made me wrong somehow, broken, but then I met Kirith. He glanced at her. She was glowing softly, creating gentle patterns in her crystal form. She sees the world the way I do. She understands that mathematics isn't cold or empty. It's beautiful. It's a language that describes everything in the universe. And when I look at her, I see that language written in light and crystal. I see harmony. The room was silent. Jake continued. If a human and a Xinthian can understand each other so completely, then maybe we're not as different as we think. Maybe all intelligent species speak the same language underneath, the language of curiosity, of wonder, of trying to understand the universe we live in. He paused. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Kirith and I will face more challenges. I'm sure we will. But I know that working together, we can solve any problem, human and Xinthian. Different on the surface, but the same where it matters. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Jake stepped back, his face hot. But Kirith's colors were brilliant, cycling through every shade of happy he had learned to recognize. After the ceremony, the real work began. Jake and Kirith were assigned to head a joint human-Xinthian research team. They would develop new technologies together, combining the best of both species' knowledge. But not everyone was happy about the growing connection between the species. A protest group arrived at the neutral space station, where the final treaty negotiations were taking place. They carried signs denouncing the alliance. Some were human, others were Xinthian. They believed their species should remain separate. It's unnatural, one human protester said in a news interview. We shouldn't be mixing with aliens. It will destroy our culture, a Xinthian protester agreed. Humans are too chaotic, too unpredictable. They will corrupt our way of life. Jake watched the news reports with a heavy heart. Kirith sat beside him, her colors muted. They don't understand, she said. No, they're afraid of change. That's natural, but it still hurts to hear. The protests grew larger. Some people called for Jake and Kirith to be separated. Others demanded that the treaty negotiations be stopped. Captain Hayes called them to her office again. I'm not going to lie to you. This is becoming a political issue. There are members of both governments who want to use you as an example of why the alliance is a bad idea. What do we do? Jake asked. You stand firm. You keep doing your work. You show people that the fear is unfounded. The captain's expression softened. But I also want you to think carefully about what you're willing to sacrifice. Your relationship is under a microscope. Every decision you make will be scrutinized. That's not fair, but it's reality. Jake and Kirith looked at each other. They had discussed this privately many times. They knew the challenges ahead. We're not going to hide, Jake said. We're not going to pretend we don't care about each other to make others comfortable. Good, Captain Hayes said. Because I think the protesters are wrong. I think what you two represent is the best hope for the future. Over the following days, more people began to speak in support of Jake and Kirith. Scientists on both worlds praised their collaborative work. Young people on Earth and the Xinthian homeworld began calling them inspiration. The tide of public opinion slowly started to turn. Ben found Jake in the lab one evening. You see the latest polls? No, I try not to look. You should. 60% of humans now support the alliance. 55% of Xinthians. Those numbers were way lower a month ago. Jake felt a weight lift from his chest. That's good news. It's because of you, man. People see you and Kirith working together, being happy together, and they think maybe it's not so scary after all. That night, Jake stood at the observation window, looking out at the stars. Kirith joined him, her reflection glowing in the glass. "What are you thinking?" she asked, "about the future, about us, about whether we can really make this work long-term. Are you having doubts?" "No, but I'm realistic. We're going to face obstacles, people who don't approve, maybe even laws that make things difficult for us." Kirith moved closer. "Then we change those laws. We show people a better way. That is what pioneers do," Jake smiled. "When did you become so optimistic?" "When I met you. You taught me that different does not mean impossible." 6 months had passed since the Xinthians first arrived on the horizon. Jake stood in his quarters, packing his belongings into storage containers. The diplomatic mission was ending. Tomorrow, the horizon would return to Earth. The Xinthian delegation would return to their homeworld, and Jake would be separated from Kirith. "Stop folding that shirt so precisely," Ben said from the doorway. "You're going to wear it out before you even wear it." Jake realized he had been folding and unfolding the same piece of clothing for 5 minutes. He set it down. "Sorry, my mind is elsewhere." "I know where your mind is. Same place it's been for 6 months." Ben came into the room and sat on the bed. "Have you two talked about what happens next?" "We've talked, but talking doesn't make it easier." The truth was that Jake and Kirith had been avoiding the subject. They both knew this day was coming. They both knew they would have to separate. But acknowledging it out loud made it too real. There was a gentle sound at the door. Jake's heart jumped. He knew that pattern of tones. It was how Kirith announced herself. "Come in," he called. She entered, her crystalline form dimmer than usual. Jake had learned that meant she was sad. His chest tightened. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." She stood there for a moment, neither of them knowing what to say. Ben quietly excused himself and left. When they were alone, Kirith moved closer. "I have news. I wanted to tell you in person." "What kind of news?" "My government has offered me a position. I am to be the first Xinthian ambassador permanently stationed on Earth. I will live in your world, help facilitate the cultural exchange programs we developed." Jake's heart soared. "That's amazing. That means we can—" Then he stopped. He saw the sadness still in her colors. "But you don't want to accept?" "I do want to accept. More than anything. But it means leaving my homeworld for years. Maybe forever. It means living among humans, learning human ways, adapting to a world so different from my own. That's a huge sacrifice, and yes. But I would make it. For you, for us," she paused. "Except you have been offered a position too, haven't you?" Jake nodded slowly. "How did you know?" "Ambassador Zeknor told me. Earth wants to send an ambassador to the Xinthian homeworld. They want someone who understands our culture, someone who speaks our language. They asked you." "Yeah, they did." "So we both have the same choice," Kirith said. "One of us must leave our home. One of us must sacrifice our world for the other." They stood in silence. Jake's mind raced through possibilities, but he kept coming back to the same problem. No matter what they chose, someone would lose something. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "What way?" "We cannot be in 2 places at once, and maybe we can. Not literally, but functionally." An idea was forming in his mind. "What if we split our time? 6 months on Earth, 6 months on your world. We both become ambassadors. We both work in both places." Kirith's colors shifted, becoming thoughtful. That might work, but it would be difficult. Constant travel, never fully settling in one place, but we would be together, and we would be building something important, showing both our peoples that cooperation is possible. "You would do that? Give up a permanent home?" Jake smiled. "Kirith, you are my home. Wherever you are, that's where I belong." Her colors exploded into brilliant patterns, every shade of joy and love she knew how to express. Jake wished he could hug her, but he settled for standing close, letting her light wash over him. "I will propose it to Ambassador Zeknor," she said, "and you will speak to Captain Hayes." They spent the rest of the evening planning. By the time Kirith left, Jake felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. The next morning, both governments agreed to their proposal. Jake and Kirith would serve as joint ambassadors, representing human-Xinthian cooperation. They would travel between worlds, teaching and learning, building bridges. On the day of departure, a grand ceremony was held in the Horizon's main assembly hall. Human and Xinthian officials gathered to celebrate the success of the mission. The treaty had been signed. The alliance was official. But before the formal proceedings, Kirith asked for permission to perform a traditional Xinthian shape dance. Such performances were rare and significant in her culture. Jake had never seen one before. The lights in the hall dimmed. Kirith moved to the center of the space. For a moment she was still. Then she began to change. Her crystalline form flowed and shifted, creating patterns Jake had never imagined possible. She grew tall, then compressed small. She formed spirals and fractals. Her colors cycled through the entire spectrum, each shade precisely timed to the mathematical sequences she was creating. Jake watched, mesmerized. He could read the patterns now. He understood what she was saying with her body. She was telling a story in geometric language, the story of two beings from different worlds who found each other, who learned to speak a common language, who chose love over fear. The patterns grew more complex. Jake saw Fibonacci spirals, golden ratios, harmonic frequencies, all woven together in a dance of pure mathematics. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When Kirith finally stopped, returning to her normal form, the room was silent. Then slowly applause began. Humans and Xinthians alike showed their appreciation, each in their own way. Jake walked to the center of the hall. He had something to give her. He had been working on it in secret for weeks, using every spare moment in the lab. He held out a small crystal sphere. It was about the size of his fist, perfectly smooth and clear. Inside it, microscopic structures had been laser-etched with incredible precision. "I made this for you," he said. "It's programmed to refract light in specific patterns. Your patterns, the ones you use to express emotion." Kirith took the sphere carefully. As she held it, light passed through and created rainbows in the air. The patterns were simple versions of the geometric sequences she used in her shape language. "You created a tool that speaks my language," she said softly. "I wanted you to have something from me, something that shows I understand you, that I see you." Kirith held the sphere close. Her colors became so bright that several people had to look away. But Jake did not look away. He had grown used to her light. "Thank you," she said. "This is the most meaningful gift I have ever received." The formal ceremony continued. Speeches were made. Awards were presented. Jake and Kirith were recognized for their contributions to the alliance. But for Jake, the real moment had already happened. Later, as the human and Xinthian ships prepared to separate, Jake stood in the docking bay with Ben. "So this is it," Ben said. "You're really leaving Earth behind." "Not leaving. Just expanding my home to include two worlds." "That's a nice way to put it." Ben held out his hand. Jake shook it firmly. "I'm going to miss working with you, man." "I'll miss you too. But you can visit." Both worlds are setting up tourism programs. Tourism to an alien planet. That's insane. I love it. Jake boarded the transport that would take him to the Xinthian ship. Kirith was waiting for him inside. They would travel together to her homeworld first, where Jake would begin his work as ambassador. As the transport pulled away from the horizon, Jake looked back at the ship that had been his home for 3 years. He felt a pang of sadness, but also excitement. His life was changing in ways he never imagined. "Are you nervous?" Kirith asked. "About seeing my world?" "A little, but mostly excited. I want to meet your people, learn your culture properly, see the place that made you who you are. They will love you. How could they not? You speak our language better than some Xinthians?" Jake smiled. "I had a good teacher." The journey to the Xinthian homeworld took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake studied everything he could about Xinthian society. Their history, their art, their science. Kirith taught him more about shape language, helping him understand subtle patterns he had missed before. When they finally arrived, Jake stood at the viewport and stared in wonder. The Xinthian homeworld was unlike anything he had ever seen. Cities made of crystal rose from the landscape, catching sunlight and throwing it back in millions of colors. The planet itself seemed to glow. "Welcome to Xinthia," Kirith said. "Welcome to my home." As they descended to the planet's surface, Jake felt a sense of rightness. This was where he was supposed to be, not just because of Kirith, though that was part of it, but because he was doing something important. He was helping two species learn to understand each other. The first few months on Xinthia were challenging. Everything was different. The architecture, the customs, the way people interacted. Jake made mistakes constantly. But the Xinthians were patient with him. They appreciated his efforts to learn their ways. And every day he learned more about Kirith. He met her family, her friends from before she became a diplomat. He learned about her childhood, her dreams, her fears. He fell more in love with her with each passing day. 6 months later, they traveled to Earth. Kirith faced the same challenges Jake had faced on her world. Human customs confused her. Human chaos overwhelmed her at first, but Jake was there to guide her just as she had guided him. They settled into a rhythm. 6 months on Xinthia, 6 months on Earth. In each place, they worked to build understanding between the species. They taught classes. They developed exchange programs. They helped young people from both worlds learn each other's cultures. Years passed. The alliance between humans and Xinthians grew stronger. Trade flourished. Scientific cooperation led to new discoveries. And at the center of it all, in their own small way, were Jake and Kirith. One evening, 5 years after they first met, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking a human city. Kirith stood beside him, her form reflecting the city lights. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life? The constant travel? Never having a permanent home?" "Never," she said without hesitation. "You told me once that I am your home. The same is true for me. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." Jake reached out his hand. Over the years, Kirith had learned to solidify parts of her form to allow touch. She extended a portion of her crystalline structure and wrapped it around his hand. It was cool and smooth, unlike human skin, but it felt right. "I love you," he said. 3 simple words in human language. Kirith's form shifted, creating patterns that said the same thing in geometric sequences. The Fibonacci spirals appeared in her structure. The golden ratios that meant love and devotion. She was speaking in her language and his at the same time. "I love you too," she said in words. Then she added patterns that had no direct human translation, but Jake understood them anyway. They meant forever. They meant complete. They meant harmony. Below them, the city continued its busy night. Humans went about their lives, most of them unaware of the aliens who now lived among them. But some knew. Some remembered the story of the engineer who accidentally spoke his thoughts about an alien's shape, and her unbelievable reply. It had become a famous story told on both worlds. A story about how differences can become bridges, how what makes us strange can also make us compatible, how love can exist in unexpected places, between unexpected beings. But for Jake and Kirith, it was not a story. It was their life. A life they had chosen together, despite all obstacles. A life built on understanding, on mathematics, on seeing beauty in patterns others could not perceive. As they stood together watching the city lights, Jake knew he would not change a single thing. The accidental comment that started everything, the awkward first meetings, the diplomatic complications, the protests and challenges, it had all been worth it. Because he had found his perfect match in the most unexpected place. In an alien who spoke in shapes and saw the world through mathematics. In someone so different from him on the surface, but so similar where it mattered. And together they had built something beautiful. Not just a relationship, but a bridge between worlds. A demonstration that intelligent beings, no matter how different, could find common ground. Jake smiled and squeezed Kirith's crystalline hand gently. She glowed brighter in response, her colors cycling through every shade of happiness. They did not need words. They had their own language now. A language of light and mathematics, of patience and understanding, of choosing each other every single day despite the difficulties. It was, Jake thought, the perfect harmony he had always been searching for.